You know that feeling when you finally meet the person you've waited for your whole life? The universe seems to align, the air smells sweeter, and every cliche love song suddenly makes sense. For me, that feeling was like finally hitting the jackpot after years of playing small. I was turning 30, never seriously dated, and let's be honest, I was known as the relationship guru who had never been in a relationship. My friends came to me for advice, and I could quote dating theory like I had a PhD, but I was all book knowledge and zero experience. I thought my life was destined to be a series of lonely Friday nights. Then I met Liam. I know what you're thinking. A 30-year-old woman with zero relationship experience? How is that even possible? Trust me, I heard it all. My mom was always telling me to just meet someone, anyone. But I was holding out for a real connection, a lightning bolt moment with a man who wasn't just fine, but truly great. Someone who ticked all the boxes. Someone whose eyes lit up when he talked about his work and his future. My best friend, Clara, finally had enough. She told me I couldn't win the lottery if I didn't buy a ticket. I needed to actively put myself out there. So I signed up for a local running club, figuring it was a low-pressure way to meet people who shared a healthy interest. It was there, on my very first run, that I literally ran into Liam. He was gorgeous, tall, kind eyes, and the perfect running cadence. He even volunteered to keep my pace since I was new. He was an IT executive at a major tech firm, successful, charming, and seemed completely taken with me. It was the effortless, natural meeting I had always dreamed of. For the first 2 months, it was a fairy tale. We were inseparable. We spent hours talking about everything, our dreams, our fears, our favorite pasta dish. I was finally experiencing the real-life romance I'd only read about. Then things began to change. It started subtly. He'd seem distracted when we were together. I'd ask him what was wrong, and he'd just brush it off, saying work was stressful. But his eyes were always somewhere else. One evening we were walking by the Hudson River, the exact spot where we'd had our first kiss, and I pointed it out, feeling nostalgic. His response? "Oh, this spot? Yeah, it's just the river." Just the river? How could he forget where we shared that amazing, monumental moment? It felt like I was with a stranger. The weirdest thing, though, was the phone calls. There were a couple of times he went radio silent for an entire day. No texts, no calls back. Once I was frantic, convinced something awful had happened. When he finally called the next morning, he claimed he'd had a bad flu and had passed out after taking heavy cold medicine. No warning text, nothing. It was hard to believe. Then came the red flags I couldn't ignore. Clara swore she saw Liam at a high-end club in downtown Manhattan one Friday night when he told me he was homesick. Even worse, she said he was with another woman, a woman in a bright red dress, and they looked very cozy. My heart sank. Was he cheating? Was my dream relationship just a lie? I was terrified. He was my first serious love. I had already pictured our life together, but I needed to know the truth. I had his address, the stylish apartment he always brought me to, and his office location at the tech company. I had to investigate myself. I started by checking up on his office. Yes, he worked there, and his reputation was excellent. I felt a wave of relief. Maybe Clara was wrong. Maybe he was just stressed, and I was being paranoid. But then one day, I drove past his office on a Saturday, hoping to catch him for a surprise lunch. I saw him leave, but he got in his car and drove in the opposite direction from the apartment I knew. He pulled up to a different, less fashionable building and used a key code to get in. A few days later, I was lurking near that second apartment, totally consumed by my fear. I saw a woman I didn't recognize walk into the building. And then, the shock. The woman in the red dress, the one Clara had seen at the club, came out a few minutes later. They definitely knew each other. Was this his real girlfriend? Was I and the other woman? The final straw came when Liam and I were out for dinner. We're sitting there, and suddenly he excused himself to go to the bathroom. A minute later, I saw him, or at least I thought it was him, out the window walking down the street with another man. But this other man was wearing the same jacket as Liam and had the same profile. I rushed outside, my mind spinning. I cornered the two men. They both looked identical. I mean, absolutely identical. Liam, I choked out, looking back and forth between them both. Who are you? That's when they confessed the unbelievable truth. They were identical twins, Liam and Ryan. Ryan had been adopted by their aunt as a child, which is why they had different last names and lived in different places, but they were never far from each other. The man I was dating wasn't Liam, the IT executive. It was Ryan, a freelance developer who had been using his twin brother's name and corporate status to meet women. The IT company, the apartment, the high-status life, it was all Liam's, borrowed by Ryan. The true horror hit me when I realized that they had been switching places. Who was I with the night of our first kiss on the river? That was Ryan, one of them confessed. But when we went away for that weekend trip, I handled the first night, Liam admitted sheepishly. Ryan covered the second day. The first time we were intimate? Ryan, that was me, sorry. The second time in the apartment? Liam, that was my turn. I had been dating two men who shared everything, including me, as a casual, sick game. The twin who was sick that day, he was out with the other twin's date. When I saw him with the woman in the red, that was Liam, the real Liam, with his actual girlfriend. Ryan just used Liam's identity when he wanted a girl with the higher standards. They laughed it off, saying I was too serious, and that my intense interest in dating theory was so funny that they couldn't help but see how far they could push the joke. They told me I drove men away with my seriousness, and that I should just lighten up. My first love wasn't a fairy tale. It was a humiliating, cruel lie. It was the most devastating moment of my life, but I refused to let them have the last word. I took the evidence I had, the records of their deceit, and I held them accountable. I sued both brothers for emotional distress and sexual assault based on the lack of informed consent. Liam, the IT executive, lost his job. Ryan, the instigator, had to pay a massive settlement. They faced real consequences for treating my heart and my body like a cheap joke. My first love story ended in a nightmare, but it taught me a valuable lesson. The best revenge is living well. And sometimes you have to fight for your self-respect. Now I know what I deserve, and I will never settle again. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts on this incredible story in the comments below, and subscribe for more incredible stories.